So in this video, I want to talk about the middle class shrinking and the wealth gap widening. So this is a very serious issue taking place in the world right now, and I don't think too many people understand what's really going on and why it's happening. So the wealth gap is accelerating, the widening of the wealth gap at a fast pace. And the truth is, this isn't a conspiracy, it's not fear-mongering or doom and gloom. It's just being realistic and looking at the reality for what it is. And the truth is, it's unfolding right in front of us as we speak. It's happening in slow motion, and it's been accelerating since 2020. And before we get into how you can protect yourself and what you need to do, you first fully need to understand the reality of what's happening and the current situation. So without understanding what's really going on and why it's happening, you can't take the right steps to actually protect yourself financially. So you have to understand fundamentally what's happening. And protection starts with awareness. So when you fully understand the situation clearly, then only and then you can actually take the right action to protect yourself and your family, financially speaking. So we'll start here. For context, back in 1971, this was officially when we went off the gold standard. I think it was the end of constitutional money. 61% of Americans at the time were considered middle class. Fast forward to today, that number has actually dropped to 51%. And the trend shows no signs of slowing down or reversing. The truth is simple. What's happening now is the country is splitting into two groups. Okay? On one side, you have the individuals that are doing extremely well. They own most of the wealth, most of the assets in the world. And on the other side of the spectrum, the other side, you have a growing population of people around the world and in America that are struggling just to make ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck, buried in debt, buried in loans, with very little chance of climbing out of that hole. And this is the truth. This is basically the definition of the widening wealth gap. Okay, you have the haves and the have-nots, and it's taking effect as we speak, and it has been for a while. And between the two gaps, what's happening is you have this middle class that's being wiped out completely. This is the widening of the wealth gap. Now, let's discuss why this is happening, because there are a few reasons. But the shrinking middle class and the widening of the wealth gap in the middle, where the middle class is being wiped away, this is being driven primarily by inflation and currency devaluation that's caused from central banks and governments pretty much expanding the money supply, printing currency, adding that to the system, and governments issuing more debt to fund their deficits. So in theory, the money, if it were to be distributed evenly in a perfect world, wages would be rising accordingly, there would be no poverty, everybody would get their fair share, everybody would be benefiting fairly and evenly. But that's not how the system works. And it's not the world we live in. And the reality is that the new money that's created, the bulk of it flows first into the hands of corporations, financial elites, financial institutions, and political donors. That's how it was structured, okay? It's structured like that, and the financial system isn't broken in the eyes of these financial elites and big players. As a matter of fact, the financial system, this debt-based system, is functioning perfectly for them, just the way it was intended to, by essentially pushing a lot of the wealth higher up the food chain to the rich. and basically pricing out lower and middle income classes from owning assets, because the way to get ahead is to own assets. And if they price you out of that because they devalue the currency, then they're pushing you down the food chain. And the currency is currently being devalued. Inflation takes hold, prices of everyday necessities continue to rise, such as groceries, rent, gasoline, insurance, utilities, housing. Pretty much the cost of everything is rising. And at the same time, asset inflation is taking place. Because they're printing money, you have asset inflation, which means the inflating of assets such as gold, stocks, art, land, real estate, crypto, digital assets. And those assets climb up in price because we measure them in the fiat currency that they're printing. And here's the thing. The wealthy, the financial elites, benefit from this system because they own the bulk of the assets that happen to be rising in value when priced in fiat currency. Okay? As they create credit and debt, issue that into the system, increase the money supply. And this is another form of money printing, and they try to keep it complicated so the masses don't fully understand what's happening. But as currency units are created into an existence, pushed into the system, there is essentially more money, new money in the system, in the supply, chasing limited number of goods and assets. And essentially this pushes up asset prices when measured in that fiat currency that they keep printing and creating out of thin air. It doesn't matter if they call it liquidity, debt creation, credit creation, it's all money printing. And the middle income is the one that suffers, the lower income and the middle income class. And the lower income classes mostly don't own any of these assets. And essentially, they get stuck with the pain of higher costs without basically sharing the upside of asset inflation, which is what the wealthy and the rich do. They get that benefit. And the result is simple and unfortunate. The system is designed to keep the rich getting richer. And pretty much everyone else that does not own assets lower down the food chain continues to fall further behind. And this continues to increase the wealth gap. And this is the current situation. Millions of Americans and people around the world are pretty much relying on credit card loans, personal loans, credit cards, debt, And the US credit card debt has already hit $1.21 trillion in 2025, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And it's still climbing. So it's not getting any better, and the data says that. And people aren't just falling behind, okay? They're also digging themselves into a much deeper hole because of high interest rates tied to the debt that they have. So they'll never be able to repay the debt back, and they keep going deeper and deeper in the hole. So it's this vicious cycle. Inflation benefits asset holders because of asset inflation, but essentially it pushes wage earners down the hole even more. And the wealthy move higher up the ladder, higher up the food chain because they own assets, while the middle class is pretty much hollowed out, and a lot of the middle class is now becoming the lower income class. And those at the bottom pretty much stay trapped deeper in debt and keep digging themselves in a hole. And unless you position yourself correctly and strategically, the gap will only continue to grow wider and drag people down, middle income earners, okay? And it would get even harder, and that's the truth. There's another very critical reason for why the middle class is shrinking at an accelerated rate, and the truth is this: it's because paychecks and wages aren't rising fast enough, and everybody knows it. They're not keeping up with the rate of currency debasement, which is 8 to 10% annually, okay? The wealth gap widening as we speak isn't an accident, and that's the truth. It's a structural issue, and wages just simply aren't keeping up with the cost of everything and the cost of everyday living. As those continue to rise, wages aren't keeping up fast enough, and this includes food, insurance, healthcare, housing, taxes, rent, utilities. All costs of everything are rising fast. And unfortunately, the paychecks, the wages haven't kept up, and the truth is this: they are never going to keep up. This is one of the designs in the system to continue widening the wealth gap.